like to introduce Sheila de Bretteville, the Director of Graduate Studies in Graphic Design.
Welcome everybody who's here. I know you're all each unique and we want to know the way in which you are unique. But before we do that, I think that it would be best that you see a brand new keynote that we made and introduce you to Susan Sellers and to Julian Bittiner, who have been working very hard to get this done so that you get a sense of the larger picture of being, literally the picture of being here. So I hand this off to Susan, who can begin the keynote.
Hi everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you to the program in graphic design. We want to give you a little bit of a window inside the building since we don't have the opportunity to visit. Of course, Yale School of Art is 2 hours from train. It sits in Yale School of Art among all of its incredible resources in the university, and with its kind of cohorts in sculpture and painting and printmaking. So here is our building, 1156 Chapel Street. Welcome. The sculpture studios and the painting and printmaking studios. So I want to take you a little bit through the program and the facts and figures a little bit, and the spaces and the resources that would be available to you in our philosophy. So we're a program of visual exploration and academic study in graphic design, bringing together ambitious and imaginative students from all around the world to really explore design as a visual language and a methodology for investigating culture, technology, and the issues that we care about, the issues of our time. We make fonts, we design fonts, typography, books, installations, environmental graphics, artworks. We explore imagery and media and the tools that create them, new technologies, AI, VR, visual interfaces, and really experimentation and exploration is at the core of this. Really thinking about the texture, the pattern, the shape, and the impact of language and the broader field of design. So if you're here, we assume that you are questioning, should I get an MFA in design? Where should I do that? Should I do that at Yale? So we're going to propose a few reasons and we'll revisit later. Anyway, I think the biggest reason that we can all speak to is the opportunity to develop a more meaningful, fulfilling, purposeful design practice and a more successful design practice. Importantly, however you choose to define it. And the individual point of view and experience is really at the center of our program. Of course, it's an opportunity to further your creative and intellectual potential as a designer, to take risks, to broaden and deepen your form making and your thinking, and also to make new creative partnerships, which is really important. It's an opportunity to investigate and have greater impact or insight into the nature of the discipline, the profession, to consider new approaches to practice, to work along highly motivated peers and practitioners within the context of the graduate school and a research university and all the tools that brings with it, as Taryn suggested, and to engage with an international group of designers, artists, practitioners, academics, and scholars. So, and finally, to become a part of this community of alumni that are that work and practice and live across the region and also across visual and design disciplines generally. A little bit of history about the department. The department was this department was the first degree program in graphic design in the U.S. It was started with Joseph Albers at its head. And the department was the 2 and 3D design department in 1950. And it is originally grounded in the European Bauhaus tradition and was very influential in defining mid-century modernism in graphic design. So professors, Joseph Albers, you may know Bradbury Thompson, Herbert Motter, Paul Rand, Armin Hoffman, later generation Dan Friedman. This was really at the heart of the design program and the professors and the thinkers when the program was founded. It's changed quite a bit, as you can imagine. It was 70 years ago. So now we are really focused on this idea of graphic design. It's the language of our time, visual, sentient, immediate, intuitive, grounded and shaped by technologies and media as they emerge. In many ways shaped by cultural norms, but also with the capacity to question, to explore, and to change those norms and those values in our environment and our future if we approach its use creatively and critically. And so in order to prepare our graduates and also thinking ourselves as faculty, we focus on building tangible visual skills, pursuing the critical study of the practice, thinking and rethinking its tools, understanding and rethinking technology, its history and its potential and its future. And we really believe in practicing design as a form of expression and an engagement with yourself and with the world, with the field. I'm just going to give you a little picture in between some statements. So I want to be clear, oftentimes a great way to define something is to talk about what it's not rather than what it is. And I think what our program is not, it's not centered on technical skills, stylistic movements, or standards of professional practice norms, but it's rather on this idea of the cultivation of an individual visual voice and a working methodology. This is really at the center of this program. And so with this framework, we strive for inclusivity, which really compels us to challenge professional norms and practice, question them, unlearn, rethink the prevailing paradigms of design education, again, experiment with new forms, pursue critical discourse, and that's at the very heart of everything we do, and as well elevate diverse visual traditions that are maybe not prominent or have been undervalued or set aside, rethink and celebrate those visual transitions, values, and alternative forms of cultural production. And in this, our biggest goals are to deepen and broaden the field of graphic design and to build a community of resourceful, dexterous, ambitious thinkers and makers in the field. So the course of study, Taryn alluded a little bit to this, and I'm sure that you'll all have questions. And after this presentation, Sheila and Julian will be available to speak and answer your questions, and a broader range of faculty and students. And then we'll potentially go on into these breakout sessions. But the program is essentially a 2-year program with a preliminary year. The preliminary year is designed to segue into the second year. And it's really conceived of as this rich and supportive visual foundation year to learn and focus on the concrete skills and experience with fundamental tenets of graphic design. So this is if you are someone who doesn't have significant experience in professional practice, maybe didn't have an undergraduate degree in graphic design or from an art school, this may be the place that's right for you to start. And then the second year program is really based in conceptual design development in a diverse set of media. So typography, print, interactive, video, spatial, punctuated. So there's core studios around all of those skills as activities, those forms that are then punctuated by these open-ended creative briefs with leading practitioners from around the world. That, of course, is then augmented by academic study and exploration in the art school and in the wider university. And the culmination of the 2-year program is the thesis, which is a body of diverse work, coherent work that demonstrates this visual method that you work to create over the course of your entire time in the program. And this is then shared, presented, developed with a leading body of designers, artists, makers, thinkers, presented as such and exhibited in the art galleries at Yale. The program structure, as I suggested, is organized around this core studio. And then an interdisciplinary critical practice class, which is theory and context and sort of the issues of visual production. These are then augmented by design and art elective workshops, work with visiting critics, lectures, and academic classes taken out at the art school. And each semester culminates in a final review that is attended by faculty and external critics. So here you see thesis at the center, design electives, design workshops, these creative prompts, one-on-one critiques with visiting designers and thinkers throughout the span of your 2-year experience, graphic design lecture series that punctuates your work, critical practice, this underpinning with the art school at large, about theory and visual production, art electives in the art school. So many people, for instance, take sculpture classes or printmaking classes or work in film and video, and those are augmented in the larger context of the art school. Of course, there's an incredible, deep and rich art school lecture series bringing artists, thinkers, makers, theoreticians from around the world to share their practice and their work. And all school workshops that sometimes circulate and are generated by those lecture series. And then, of course, your work is then supported, if you choose, through academic electives in the university and initiatives in other professional schools. So just to give you a little bit even more granular insight into what that looks like, I just want to give you a few kind of hypothetical schedule. So a preliminary fall schedule might look like, on Friday, you would have this kind of core full studio that's taught by Barbara Glauber, who I know is on this call, and Scott Stoll. There's also a class taught by Julian on design systems and series. Obviously, typography is a really critical and fundamental tool taught by John Gamble, and then a class on motion, time, interactive, sound, narrative. So that is that kind of fundamental visual year for a prelim. The first year is again grounded in a core studio, first year core, taught by Sheila and Forrest Young, also present today. And as well, this critical practice class with Marta Kusma, the dean of the art school. So broader context of the art school, and then electives, in this case, a moving image class, a class on interactive and programming. There's many, many other choices here. So basically, most of your work this year is informed by deep work in the design department with a little bit of input from the art school. Of course, many people go to the larger university for sitting in on classes, input, lectures. But then finally in your second year, as you can see, your schedule kind of opens up and you're really centered in doing most of your work in the second year core graduate studio, which is essentially focusing on your degree, your thesis work. So these are independent projects done in collaboration with an advisor and your small thesis group, a smaller group of cohorts that's then supplemented by either work in the graphic design department, electives, academic classes that then support the premise and some of the tenets of your visual methodology and the work that you're pursuing independently. So that gives you a little bit of a picture of the year. And this all culminates in this idea of the thesis. So this is essentially a time to reflect on the intentionality of your own making, the things that drive the historical tenets, the theoretical tenets, the impulses, the desires that you are trying to achieve in your own work, and the how you do that, the visual strategies, the content strategies, the ways that you realize those ideas and those strategies in your visual work. So this isn't a Hallmark project. It's rather this philosophy and this methodology that is applied to all the work that you make across, classwork, prompts, commissions, freelance that you do on campus. And the idea is that everything really falls in that purview and that you use that kind of intentionality to shape everything that you produce in the context of the program. But ultimately, the thesis components are this independent work a public presentation of that methodology, a thesis book which documents this visual methodology and the scope of your work in the program, and that is required for graduation. The thesis exhibition, which is a group exhibition of all the students in the design department for that year, that is exhibited in the gallery at the art school, and a designer statement that's submitted is a requirement for your graduation, and that is supported by editors that are devoted to you in to think about writing and to help you shape that in the department. Here is a critique in the old days when we were all together in a single space and without masks. Thesis books presented in the small gallery in the design department. These are stored at the Art of the Book Room permanently, generations of them, decades of them, in the Haas Library on campus, and an old and legendary thesis exhibition in the gallery at the art school. So the head of our department, who you met just very briefly, is Sheila de Bretteville. Here she is, and you can see her on her screen. She's someone that has an iconoclast and kind of a mother of us all. She is someone that has devoted her career to pursuing design as a kind of exploration of the social fabric, of understanding marginal voices, people are left out of the canon, visual traditions that are left out of the canon, and she's always been, she's an Orthodox and has been really always thinking about bringing diversity and kind of upending the kinds of hierarchies of design in her work. She's done all different types of work, often site-specific, that incorporate print and newspapers, books, interactive experience, sensory experiences all over the world. And she's someone that has pursued this actively throughout her 3-decade tenure at Yale. And here is a little bit of her more legendary work. She started in LA with the Women's Building, and she is still working today very actively in her own professional practice. Our assistant director is Julian Bittiner. Second-year advisors are Sheila, myself, and Dan Michelson. There is an illustrious course faculty, people that have been with the program for a longer time, people that have joined recently, diverse and covering a span of disciplines and practices, and a very kind of legendary workshop faculty, designers from around the world. Again, some who have been coming for now decades, some who are more newcomers, who generate these creative prompts and these short kind of spurts of work that generate great work. So people like Irma Bohm and Karl Martens, Linda van Derzen, all from Holland, Matthew Carter, the preeminent font designer, Paul Elliman, iconoclast and sound artist and critic. More recent artists and designers, Jeff Hahn and Ryan Waller, who are here today. A critique. So all of this and all these people are supported and really live in the atrium, and I'm going to show you a few pictures of that, but that's really the center of our design world. And it's a big loft space, and it has lots of predictable but necessary equipment like wide format printers and scanning stations and color printers and a Rosso duplicator and a Vandercook press and other professional stuff to make design. Within the art school, there are resources like digital labs, 3D printing, scanning, laser cutters, of course, every kind of camera, video camera that you might desire on loan, wood and metal fabrication, and a printmaking lab. So here we have the atrium below. You'll see on the right is a small kind of gallery and gathering space. On the left are a set of printers. It is ringed with classrooms and a digital lab. The center with the swings is a big kind of active space where people do collaborative projects, lectures and group meetings happen. Lots of different projects have happened in this space over the years. And of course, the loft space that rings this center atrium is where everyone's studios are. Everyone has these individual spaces that they customize and make their own. There's a little bit of a sad and empty atrium. And so this is the space where, you know, the making happens, the printmaking labs, the wood fabrication space, computer labs, and these very kind of technically kind of advanced classrooms where performances, gallery space, and lectures happen as well. Beyond this, to the wider university, there are some really important resources to know about. I think perhaps the most significant is the CCAM, the Center for Collaborative Arts and Media, which is a kind of maker space for all kinds of new and emerging technologies, things like motion capture, VR, and also has things like vinyl cutters and 3D printers and things for you to access. And many students spend a lot of time in this space and are working in all of these different media. There are resources like the Center for Innovation in Engineering and Design, for machining, of course, the incredible libraries and archives of the university, for instance, the Beinecke, the Whitney Humanities Film Archive, the Haas Library. But one of the things that's very central to our program is content generation, seeing design as content in and of itself, but also doing research and generating content. And so these visual archives, these archives in general, are incredibly useful tools for that work. And then there are, of course, the incredible galleries, Yale School of, or the Yale Art Gallery, the British Art Center, etc. The Haas Art and Architecture Library, the Art Gallery, the amazing Louis Kahn Design British Art Center, the Beinecke. So this kind of core educational experience in your studio practice is augmented by all kinds of lectures and programming throughout the year. Of course, open house and open studios. There are thesis exhibitions and general exhibitions of all of art school students' work throughout the year in the art school gallery. As well, there are many, many student organized events, screenings, lectures, etc. These animated pieces are kind of long. But students are actively creating identity programs for these things, creating posters, creating social media campaigns, creating short films, videos. So this is a really active place where design happens, promoting and exploring all of this, these kind of programming activities in the context of the art school and beyond to the university. An amazing lecture by Hito Sterl a year ago. Marta Kuzma in dialogue, in an artist discussion, another visual identity and project for the thesis exhibition in 2017. We want to say a little bit about student body and who we're looking for. I mean, really at the heart of our program is this idea around diversity and building a diverse and inclusive community of students, of faculty and staff from all over the country, from all over the world, from all over the disciplines of design is it really important. And of course, racial and ethnic diversity, gender, diversity along the gender spectrum, socioeconomic, and diversity and in the disability spectrum as well is important. So these are all considerations in the experience and in the admissions process. And you'll see that there is a really significant number of international students in the program. I want to say also a little bit about this idea of where design happens and commission. So this university is one that was really in many ways shaped by design, right down to the Yale shuttle. And I have to say, Julian asked me why I wanted to include this picture. And maybe some of the other designers from the department are rolling their eyes, but Matthew Carter designed the font for Yale. And that handsome Dan picture, however kind of quirky a joke, and that's a kind of inside reference to Paul Rand's tenure and the identity that he did for design, for the design department, for the university during his tenure. So it's everywhere. The art gallery has been an incredible kind of supporter of design, and so much design has happened in this context in the gallery, either in promotion and for lectures and identities and exhibitions, but even students have held exhibitions, a great exhibition on Dada in the not so distant past. There's a tradition of students making posters for all of the exhibitions and events in the art school that I mentioned, for all the thesis exhibitions. There is a tradition around this journal, Perspecta, the Yale Architectural Journal, that's collaborated on by a group of architecture students and a group of designers, graphic designers, every year for you know, many issues, generations, and a kind of more impromptu, let's say rougher, more experimental publication with the architecture school called Paprika, which takes the form of a newspaper, and is kind of fast and rough and down and dirty, but a great opportunity to explore how design ideas generally and how they cross across disciplines like graphic design and architecture. So I think the one question that everyone has, and that probably will be the topic of discussion maybe later, is what does, I mean, of course there are all the admissions criteria that Taryn mentioned, but what does the portfolio, what does a winning kind of portfolio look like in the admissions process? And so we wanted to talk a little bit about that. What we're really looking for is a picture of who you are through the portfolio. So for instance, we are very interested in professional experience or your skill-based experience in design, but we're also interested in your experimental work, your hobbies, your side projects, things that are self-initiated, that demonstrate the full breadth of your experience, your skill, but also your passion and your really deep interest, and even your questions in the field of design. So we really encourage you to take that into consideration when you're developing you know, your portfolio, to include that work that's personally driven and that challenges norms, or for instance, maybe isn't necessarily finished or perfect in your mind, but that really points to the future, the curiosity and the places that you hope to go in the program. So so we'd like to see this well-rounded portrait, but we want to encourage you to include and to convey a strong sense of who you are and what you might hope to explore in the program. In terms of preliminary year portfolios, we understand in applying to a preliminary year, you may not have had professional practice in graphic design, but I'm sure in your interest, there are many rich starting points for this next point in your education. So you should include work that, you know, professional work that you do feel relates. It may be in publishing, it may be more writing, it could be, you know, working for an art gallery. You may have pursued in an undergraduate context other things in visual disciplines, painting or fine arts, architecture, photography, work in film, theater, publishing. Any of these things are relevant, and you should include evidence of those. But again, pointing to your interests and passions is a really a critical part of the your portfolio and the admissions process. And then finally, I think we want to kind of wrap things up. What does the future look like beyond graduation? You know, what's after Yale? And I think, as Lester sort of suggested, this is a big decision, and it's one that people work up to. And I think that you can't help at this point to ask, you know, if I embark on this for 2 years or 3 years, what's next? And I want to just open up the conversation to talk about the same sense of diversity and depth and breadth that we've talked about in our aspirations in the program in the university is really something that I think typifies the graduates and the alumni of this program as well. So they work across the field and in other fields at the highest levels in professional practice. They lead art schools, they lead design firms, they run design programs, they run organizations, publishing houses, professional organizations like the AIGA. They write, they curate, they publish, they make art, they program, they make technology, they research, and they work in academia, in scholarship. They lead their own independent firms and practices. I think what really unites everyone is a sense of curiosity and a sense of inquiry, a dedication to visual work and to its role in culture and how it shapes, you know, what we say, how we relate, how we think of ourselves, how we think of the world. And we're all working to think and to shape the future of the discipline and to rethink it. And so we do really think that this program, the range and depth of visual experience that you acquire, the conceptual thinking, and this cultivation of a visual methodology is a really great first step, an important foundation to that work when you step out and go into the world. And the fact is that design in its most conventional, it's often very tied to the market. And it's hard to navigate a course in that context. And so we feel so strongly that this cultivation of personal agency, of a methodology and vision that's central to the pedagogy is really important to negotiating this next step. So again, people, our graduates have worked all over in all different capacity and all different types of visual styles, in scales, in all different types of disciplines. And so I guess I want to return to that question of why do an MFA at Yale? Now at the very end of this presentation, before we have an opportunity for you to ask all of your questions of graduates and Sheila and Julian, is really if design is a tool to shape and explore and imagine like our collective and individual futures, this program really is about the time and the space and the resources and the community to build the foundation for that vision. And so I leave this presentation at that. And I open the floor to Sheila and to Julian and to the rest of faculty and students to take it from there.
Well, I would like to thank Susan for presenting the work of her own and of other members of our faculty and what we have done. I'd like to add something to it, which has to do with the fact that I came and also reside right near Yale, that we live in a city which is quite diverse, and our relationship to the other neighborhoods is something I want very much to develop even further. It has. I was definitely called on by Paul Rand. He thought I was going to ruin the program because I was going to bring the outside in, and I quite firmly mentioned that we are part of the outside. And so I'd like our students to know more about what's going on in New Haven as well, and they are doing that. That's part of the current focus of much of our students' interests, as well as their own uniqueness and getting that new uniqueness to be expressed in the work that they do. So I think that just adds that other part, because this wonderful keynote was just completed and we are still working on it to have it represent the now even more succinctly and more visually as students make those connections. There's a large group of people who are working with the Native American groups who are here in the city. There's another large group that is working in the African American community. There are many other things beyond Yale itself, because we live in a city. It's actually not a city, it's a town. And so it's smaller, but it has many parts. So that's one of the beginning things to talk about. And then I really need to know the kind of questions you've been asking, because I think now we have, this year we created a faculty working group, which is a group of, I think, basically 12 people. And this group has been really looking at other things that we had never done before. For instance, we've instituted mentors for each of for the prelim year and for the first year, because the thesis group advisors, Dan, Susan, and I, perform that kind of mentorship, but the other students should have it too. And so other members of our faculty are performing that function of being there for you, helping you shape your work and also to understand what your visual method is. And that develops over the 2 years. the first year, as Susan said, the preliminary year is for people who have not had graphic design before, but have had architecture or industrial design or publishing or some other activity and really want to become graphic designers. So the classes that are in the preliminary year tend to be more formally traced, but that you can speak to the people who teach those classes. That include interactivity, motion graphics, print graphics, typography, all the different things that you would need to do to really be with the people who come in who have had graphic design education before and have worked in the field and want to focus on themselves and what they themselves can make. So I'd like you're seeing some of the people up there. So I'd like to introduce Forrest Young, with whom I've been teaching the core class in the first year, and Manuel Miranda, who is going to do it with me in the spring, as well as Barbara Glauber, who teaches in the preliminary year. I'm just looking at who are the pictures up there to see who's here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for calling on me, Sheila. So I am Forrest Young. I'm lucky enough to have both graduated from this program, have been a prelim, to have the kind graces of Barbara Glauber and Scott Stoll. And I currently am the Chief Creative Officer of Wolf Olins. And I can personally kind of testify that this is a phenomenally unique program. And I would encourage you to ask all the questions in the safe space of Zoom, as awkward as it may be that we're on screens, because we are here to answer all of your questions. And again, to Sheila's point, this really is a program that's about you. It's about finding your own unique way to express yourself, formally and in the world. And so I think there is no bad questions. So feel free to ask us, and we'll try to do our best to answer. If not here, then as a follow-up.
I'll go next. I am Ryan Waller. I graduated in 2009, and I currently teach a workshop there, which I've been doing for the past 5 years. I had Susan as my thesis advisor, and I was a classmate of Yeju and Julian. I'll just pass it on to Yeju.
Thank you, Ryan. Hey, everybody. My name is Yeju Choi, and I graduated from this program in 2009, as Ryan said, and I've been teaching in the School of Art since 2012, I think. I teach an undergraduate class called Introduction to Graphic Design, as well as a graduate class, Exhibition Design. I think, you've just seen a lot of photos from our previous thesis shows. And I have my own practice in New York, and I also have a collaborative practice doing public art as well. Yeah, I think that's about it. Julian.
Thanks. Yeah, I like this throwing of the metaphorical football. Hi, everyone. I'm Julian Bittiner, and I'm the Assistant Director of Graphic Design Studies. And I'll keep it very brief because I want to make sure that we have enough time for all of your questions. But in broad, I teach across all three of the programs. I teach a class in the undergraduate program, another in the preliminary year graduate program, and I teach typography in the graduate program. And I'm based in Jackson Heights in Queens, New York. And that's where I work out, where I work out of with my own independent practice, also working in the cultural sphere. Thanks. Jeff, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Hahn. I graduated in 2006 from the program. I'm an independent graphic designer working in New York. And this semester I taught a workshop for the first years, and last semester I co-taught with Manuel Miranda core for the first years as well. Manuel, you're up.
Manuel Miranda. I teach in the program. I co-teach first year core with Sheila and with Jeff last year also. I've also done other things in the program too. Graduated in 2005, which sounds like a while ago, but I would say it's kind of comparable to this moment because I came in 2002 as a prelim, and it was right after 9/11. And I think it's a similar time now to kind of, retool and rethink what the world is essentially. So I think in a year or two, if you want to come, I think it's a good time. Oh, and next,
Barbara.
I'm Barbara Glauber. I have an MFA from Cal Arts, not Yale. And I have been teaching for, I think, 25 years now in the preliminary year program. I teach the core class with Scott Stowell. And did we get everyone? Is there...
I guess, yeah, maybe I can introduce myself, even though I spoke for a long time, but I didn't say. I'm Susan Sellers. I've taught that program incredibly for almost 20 years now. I met Sheila when I was 23 years old, when I was a graduate student in the School of Arts and Sciences in American Studies and Material Culture at Yale. I am a founding partner of the studio in New York City, 2x4, and I was former head of design at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I've taught core, I've taught typography, I've taught theory in the program, but right now and for some time I've been a thesis advisor in the program. And I went to RISD. I'm a graduate of RISD and of Yale, so I am not an alumna officially of the art school and the design program.
You're an honorary alum at this point.
That's why I can make that presentation.
Well, actually, of the people who are here, you are the first, one of my first hires. You and Michael Rock and then Paul Elliman are my very first hires in my first years here at Yale.
Right, I'm the oldest hired faculty member, for whatever that says about me and the program.
Also, one of the things that I think you didn't mention who just gave a workshop is antenna. You said antenna, but that's Masamichi Udagawa and Stiggy Moislinger. Every fall they teach the second year program, and they are industrial designers, but they always teach something that you actually saw in one of the images, which is one of their workshops was to do something in a space that would transform it. And those two swings that you saw in our atrium are left over from one person. It was two people's idea to put swings into the atrium, and it stays there even when we have a large lecture. We managed to put the chairs out so it includes the swings. So there are many other people who actually teach in this program. I think over 40, all of whom come and do the thing that they do best here. And you're really lucky to have so many people come and do that. And I go everywhere and do work in communities. So I'm really interested in the ways in which communities here in New Haven can become, they were very much part of the program in the 90s when Sylvia Harris was here and we did, and people from ACT UP were teaching. And I'd like to move into this next century a little further with a new relationship to other communities in New Haven.
So I think, Sheila, we should transition to questions. I did just want to very briefly also highlight that we asked these 3 student reps to be with us today, and thank you very much for joining. So that's Lester, Rosso, Alvin Ashiatey, Anna
Let's hear
Sagström.
from all 3 of them.
And I only see a few of them online currently, but Lester and Luiza, if you just want to say hi quickly.
Hi guys, I just
Lester, you met earlier.
Yeah, you met me earlier, so you can meet Luiza. Or
is Luiza here? That's great. Bianca's not here yet.
Good.
But
I think there's also other people. I think Anna Sagström is also here. Yeah.
Oh,
so tell us a little bit about how you got here. Luiza, no?
Well, Sheila, there's quite a lot of questions that have been building up in the chat. I wonder if we could maybe call on the students to speak to their experience a little bit in relation to some of these questions. Just
good idea.
Yeah. But, and Herdimas, I see you're here as well. Thank you for joining. Anyway, so there's a couple, maybe I can just run through some of the questions. So the very first one is that I see is a practical one. Do I need to submit an official transcript when applying? I believe yes, but Taryn, do you want to
answered that one in the chat. Basically, yeah, thanks, Julian. And thanks all the faculty for being here and all the students for being here too. We do ask that you submit an unofficial copy in your application, and then those who are invited for an interview will submit official transcripts. So if we want, we can ask, I can moderate the questions just so that they're more programmatic, and then I can go through all the admission ones at the end. One of the questions I'm seeing come through a couple times is, if I have a background in illustration or fine art, can I apply for the MFA program, or should I apply for the prelim program?
I think it's really important for that person to think about what you know and what you want to learn, because I think Barbara should tell you more about, or the students who are currently in the prelim program should tell you why they chose that program. Because usually people are coming who don't have any graphic design experience choose the preliminary year program, because you are getting the basics of typography and motion graphics and print graphics and interactivity. So you come into the two-year program with all those skill sets that other people who have been working also bring. So I would probably suggest that it's the prelim program, but I think you really want to hear more from people from former prelims, why they chose it would be helpful to you.
We could have some of our former prelim. We have a whole bunch of former prelims on this Zoom, so they could answer.
Okay, go ahead. You know, actually, Forrest, you were a prelim. You want to say why you chose to apply to it?
Yeah, I think I love the prelim year, not just because I love Barbara and Scott, which is true, but I think it's a phenomenal year to get acquainted with the university that is Yale. I think one of the considerations when you're deciding to pursue graduate study are, what are the resources available to you at any time? And I think one of the advantages of going to a research university are some of the things that Susan alluded to, the fact that you could look at the Frederick Douglass collection in the Beinecke Library, or start to pursue fine art and architectural excellence by some of the great facilities on campus, or technologically understanding new and emerging media like augmented reality, virtual reality. And with these types of practitioners and resources available, that's fairly unparalleled. But I also think that you get the hands-on, intimate instruction from Barbara and Scott in terms of not only the history of graphic design, but specifically how you start to develop a foundational approach to form, and start to develop a unique way in which you're applying forms, that you go into the regular 2-year sequence with that confidence to be able to feel like you have it underfoot. And I think in many ways, some of you are probably saying, well, could you really fit like 4 years of a BFA into 1 year of a prelim program? And the answer is yes, and I think in many ways, it's great because it is foundational approach and focus on those elementary skills, at the same time being exposed to world-class resources at your disposal. So I think that the joining of those two things makes for a very special year. Also, you're dealing with classmates that are coming from non-traditional backgrounds. Somebody may have a psychology degree, somebody may have a background in industrial design. So you're all approaching and investigating design from different vantage points, which means the conversations you're having about design tend to be a bit more nuanced and a bit more vibrant than all having a relatively homogeneous experience.
Yeah. Is there any of the students want to answer who are prelim?
Yeah, that'd be Herdimas, do you want to say a few words? It'd be great to hear from you, since you are a prelim or were a prelim.
Oh yeah, hi everyone. I'm Herdimas. I was a former prelim. I think I also saw the question in which I have a Bachelor of Science in Engineering, which actually, as I am, my background was in chemical engineering, and I applied to this 3-year program. And I think even though most of us didn't came from a traditional art school background or a graphic design background, I think we the good thing is we just bring some new vantage points that what graphic design was supposed to be or like what's not supposed to be, which means that like, I don't know, I think it's a good thing to have like a non-traditional background to enrich the graphic design medium in the first place. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Herdimas. And Anna, I'm wondering, I think your background was sort of industrial design, right? So if we have those two sort of different backgrounds represented, that'd be really great. And a more science background, and then maybe like kind of related arts discipline background. If you want to say a few words.
Yeah, my background is actually fine art sculpture.
Oops, sorry, sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And I'd also been out of school for, I think, 10 years when I reapplied, and it was very, I think 2 years is very fast, so the additional time is a huge benefit. But at the time, I really wanted to leave art and move to design. And I think now I'm at a point where I'm mixing the two, but it was very important for me to get a year of just get the skills, but also sort of try out, like add this entire part of like my identity now as someone can bridge and moves between art and design. And I think had it not been for that sort of concentrated year of study, I think I would have fallen back to like a lot of what I consider to be shortcuts or just ways of working before I came in here. And it just has enriched my my thinking as an artist and as a designer to have like a very concentrated year of design studies before going into more like free and sort of project-based work.
That's great, thank you.
Sorry.
Alvin, is Alvin here?
I haven't seen him. Oh, great.
Good.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Alvin, and I was in a pre-learning program in Ghana. My background is painting, fine arts and painting. And I consider the prelim program as somewhat like a design boot camp. Like it was very helpful. It was helpful to like go through all that foundational class like within that year, and it was very helpful. Like and also in the prelim program, you get to see what is like expected of you in the years ahead. So it was so helpful. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Alvin, so much to all of you for articulating that background. We have a lot of questions in the chat about COVID and how the program is running right now. One question is particularly about admission, which is, do we expect fewer applicants? And you never know until application deadline comes. We had several students from both prelim and the MFA program defer last year, as well as some students take a leave of absence. So that's impacting our numbers. But class, someone's asking, how has COVID impacted the Yale community positively? Are there new ways to connect? And how are the classes running basically right now?
Well, we certainly can explain that, but we're very much hoping that by fall of next year, we will not be doing what we're doing currently now. I have to say that teaching the incoming first year class with Forrest, it has been really a pleasure. Everyone really wants and feels like they want to get as much as they can get to do their own work and how to do their own work. And I have come in person, I think I have the list. I think it's about 8 times. And now, right now, because there's been an uptick of COVID, I can come because I live here, but I can't come because it's not a good idea. So this particular moment, everything is being done on Zoom, and it doesn't seem to have changed the quality of the work. It might be changing the nature of community in some way, because we really count on the nature of our space used to be a basketball court, and it means that you are all there but 6 feet apart. That's not so different than when you weren't 6 feet apart, because you're all there. And so I think those who come and work in the atrium are creating a community and working with each other. And so that's one of the good things. And many people are also had set up the ones who had been here before had set up in their apartment, and so haven't really transferred what's in their, where they're living, to the studio, because the COVID is still at work. So there is it's more empty in the atrium than it usually has been. This is from my perspective. I think it'd be really good of those of you who I've seen there. I don't know if Catherine Kay is here, or who else from the student body. I thought Luiza's here, and she was one of the people who were here before. So I'm not sure who's out there to tell you about how it feels to be here as a student. I don't find that it's affecting the work at all, but it is affecting how people are, because we're not there physically together. But if you come in the fall, you will definitely be here together.
Yeah, can any of the students just talk a little bit about their experience because the studio is open, although the classes are happening remotely, most classes.
Yeah, and people are making their work in the studio. So we have printing presses there, we have cutting machine, we have all the machinery that you need to do the work. It's more that not everybody is there, and not everybody's there all the time. But I don't see absolutely everyone, so I don't know who's here.
Maybe Lester, because you came into a COVID situation, that might be interesting to hear.
Yeah, so I came into the atrium as it is now, but I had visual experience with the atrium before. I'd visited the campus, I had friends in the program, and it definitely is, it's probably at its fullest, maybe like 15 students in there working at any one time. There is more of a sense of, or I've been told that I think that coming into it, there's more cross dialogue between the prelims, first years and second years, just because we're all there and there's not, it's, I think we're all just kind of leaning into one another a little more than we would in a normal year. So that's been really nice. Outside of that, I do feel like my expectations have been pretty well met with what the situation has been like. Before the spike, I think classes were a good mix of in-person and remote. I know in Julian's class, we were meeting at least I think once a week in person, it started feeling like, and then in Barbara and Scott's class as well. So I also have felt like I have been putting in the utmost effort into every project, as well as my peers. So, and that's something that I think is palpable. You can tell when, somebody isn't really pushing all the way, but I haven't felt that. I've felt like everybody's working at maximum effort, and that's been really kind of the nicest part about this. Everybody's putting in the time and work.
Thanks, Lester. Okay. Sorry, my coffee grinder's going. Then we have some other questions. One is about work being relatively recent. So we generally say that work in the portfolio should be recent, but and this came up in several other open houses as well, because of the current situation and people not being able to produce as much work or necessarily being in spaces or situations to do so. How far back can people go, and can they include work from their undergraduate education in their portfolio?
I think, of course, choose the work that represents you best and show it to us. One of the things we've asked for actually has been to put in one project that you did because you just wanted to do it. It wasn't a teacher or someone else who asked you to do it, but you just did it because you wanted to do it. That often is very helpful in knowing what you really want to do to the extent that you can do it. You may not have the equipment for something that you want to do that was much larger, but if there's something that you did because it was just simply what you wanted to do, I think that's of interest to us. I'm seeing a question from someone who was asking about, where was it? Now it's moved, but it had to do with comic books. And our students haven't been, in general, particularly interested in designing gaming of any sort or comic books, but we've had quite a few illustrators who have been in the program and have brought their drawing skills to bear upon their graphic design. So if that's helpful to you, but over the decades, people have, that hasn't been particularly a method, but it's not like it couldn't be, because I have friends who I get the games, who make games, and I see the quality of the graphic design. It tends to be illustrational. And illustration is not a sin. It's a good thing to bring.
Thanks, Sheila.
But you'll be learning other things.
Someone else is asking if what type of recommendations do you recommend? Should they be from teachers ideally, or can they be from artists or designers or employers that the applicants may have a connection to?
All of the above. Any of the above. It's fine. People who know you, know what you're interested in, what you've done.
Okay, I have another portfolio question. If a project has multiple parts or elements, would you recommend selecting a few images to submit, or a video slide to showcase the full project?
I totally understand that question, Taryn. Is it like if an individual project has many components, like what parts to highlight?
Is probably because we said no composite images. So if a project has many parts or elements, should there be a video that showcases like how the piece works, or should it take up multiple pieces in the portfolio?
That's a choice the person's going to have to make for themselves. I mean, if it's something small and you want to have the cover and a spread, that's a kind of twosome thing you could do. But if you really have something that would be better, well represented, if it was done as a video, do it as a video. It's your choice.
Okay, great.
I think as a rule of thumb, if you have, complex projects that you feel really strongly about, then, allocate a proportionate amount of that in among the 20 slides. So certainly it would merit maybe a couple of slides. And certainly a video is sometimes a great way to show three-dimensional work or tactile work.
Someone's asking if it's necessary to live in New Haven to do the program. And my answer would be yes.
Yes.
So commuting from New York would be very difficult. The whole 24/7 sort of like nature of the Atrium Studio is really a big part of the culture of the program. And so I think it would not be recommended. Also, our student budget for financial aid is based on being residential in New Haven. Okay, let's see. So someone's asking just about work, that they know of some students working part-time at Yale University Art Gallery or the library. Do these part-time positions receive school credit? They do not, though we do have jobs on campus that students can do. There are some fellowships that students can get through the UAG or the Yale Center for British Art at times, that are design fellowships that are possible, usually over the summer. But there's also TA-ships. So most of our students in their second year of the MFA are assigned at least one TA-ship, which would be a true assistantship of a faculty teaching an undergraduate course. So I don't know if anyone wants to expand on that.
And some of our graduate classes have TAs as well. And you're in your second year.
And then someone's asking about chronological order. So yeah, the slate system will default your slides in order of the year that you assign them to. So if you want to sequence them differently, you can figure that out. You can have the agency to hack that system if you want to. And then we have some questions about like, can you apply directly out of undergrad, or how much time should you take? I'd love to hear from the students about when they felt that they were ready for this experience within the trajectory of their education. Who wants to go first?
So I think the ideal kind of timeline, but I mean, there's a lot of variation within this, is that we generally think it's good if students have a few years of experience before applying to the graduate program. So they have a better sense of the landscape, where the sort of current limitations and posture, and how they see inserting themselves into that discipline in the future, and what they want to do differently, or in what ways they want to contribute. So I think a few years out of college is, minimum is generally advised. But we do have students who come from different trajectories.
Any of our current students? The person in individual said, specifically said, this for current students and alumni, when did you know it was the right time to apply? And can you share a quick anecdote of your favorite memory during your time in the department?
Anyone wanna?
A lot of our students on here, yeah.
That's a funny thing to ask, because you know when you're ready to apply. You know that when it's a time that you really want to focus on yourself and how to get the skills that you need to do the kind of work you want to do, and to know what that kind of work is. You have to ask yourself that question and answer it for yourself. I think it's a good thing to try. I think the thing to come straight from school, it's not that we haven't accepted people in that situation. It's just, I think having you don't usually have a strong sense of yourself until you're about somewhere in around your mid-20s. And so you just need to know that you're ready. You'll know when you're ready,
I think the last time we looked at sort of average age of incoming students, it was around 27, sort of like mid to late 20s. But I mean, that changes. I was in my early 30s when I applied. And so I was on the older side, and I had worked professionally for about 6-7 years. And then we have, as Sheila mentions, exceptionally have a couple students who might come straight from undergrad, but it's rare.
Something that I would add to that is your choice to pursue graduate study in some ways is acknowledgement that you're open to reimagining and rethinking a way that you've done certain things. And so if there is a concern that you're not, quote unquote, prepared enough, I think that in some ways it is both core competencies in the language of graphic design, but it's also a willingness to re-examine those in conversation with your colleagues and with faculty. And so I would just suggest that if you feel an impulse for the program, just to apply and to address a lot of those questions or doubts in the stride of the program. That in many ways, being over-prepared or to second guess whether now is the time, to Sheila's point, you probably know if this is something that you want to do, and the question is just putting your particular story together.
Yeah, I want to say too, like, I think what Sheila's saying is right. I think if you're continuing an institutional trajectory, I did undergrad in design, now I want to do my master's. Probably it's a good thing to like step back and really think about what you're doing. But you're essentially kind of dropping out of society for 2 years. You're not going to be working. You won't be like in New York or San Francisco or wherever you're coming from. And you're just kind of doing this like, 24/7 for 2 or 3 years straight. So you kind of take yourself out of the stream of, quote unquote, like normal society. And, I think you have to really have a desire to want to do that. Because, you kind of get off track compared to like, say, maybe other people around your age. So I think that's something to think about too. It's a bit kind of an all or nothing thing. Maybe that's a little too forceful to say, but I think you kind of have to be ready for that.
Just to remind everyone, our admission deadline is January 5th. and the financial aid deadline is March 1st. We do, the admission deadline is less flexible. It's not flexible at all. The financial aid deadline, as David mentioned, depending upon your situation, can be somewhat. So, but again, the general message overall from us is start preparing this stuff now. And I think we even have a student who wanted to share something about their experience with financial aid. So
Lester.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lester. I'm in my first semester of the prelim year in the graphic design program. And I just want to say thanks for coming. I think the decision you guys are considering is really remarkable. And the steps you're taking, yeah, it's just taking me back to about this time last year and how excited I was to be doing this. And you know, as everyone knows, an MFA program is a significant financial undertaking. And when I decided that an MFA program was going to be for me, it took me another probably 1 or 2 years to determine if it was going to be financially feasible. But I was doing all of that stuff in the dark. And when I actually started speaking to people that had come through the program, everyone said the same thing. And they said, just apply, 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 go through the application process all the way, and then see if you're admitted, just take a look at what your financial award will be. As David mentioned, the scholarship at the School of Art is need-based. So if you're applying to other schools, it is really well worth your time to go through the full application process at Yale. They're very similar, and then just see where everyone lands in terms of financial award. Yeah, I just wanted to say that because I know for a lot of people it's a huge barrier, but I'm glad I applied when I did, but I was one of those students that like started their application twice and didn't submit because I thought like, oh, I can't do this. But in reality, just having all the information at hand was going to be really valuable for you guys. Even if you decide it's not for you in the end, just apply, go through the process all the way.